Hi everybody, Jennifer Schaus here, and thank you for joining us in our Webinar Wednesday series. We are coming to you live from Washington, D.C., and on Wednesdays we are covering the Far supplements. All of our webinars are complimentary and recorded. You can find the recordings on our YouTube channel now with over 500 other government contracting webinars. We do have sponsorships available. And you probably found out about today's webinar through our newsletter, which now reaches over 23,000 federal government contractors. We do have advertising options available in the newsletter. If you have questions about sponsorship or advertising, shoot us an email to the address that you see there on your screen, which is hello@jenniferschaus.com. Just a quick blurb about us before we dig into the rest of the program. We are based in DC and provide professional services for established government contractors, including product, service, and software firms. Our services are listed on our website, most notably GSA Schedule Service. Go to our website to find more information about what we do. This series, as I mentioned, is complimentary and recorded. Our speakers are subject matter experts, government contracts attorneys, sometimes accountants, and others. We do have a kind of a separate webinar coming up on Thursday, March 17th. It's in our COVID contracting series. The registration link is in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, and everybody will get a copy of the slide deck, so you can register for that if it's of interest. You can see the title there in your top right-hand corner, so I'm not going to read that off. Also, at the end of the month, on Monday, March 28th, we're going to be back in person. After taking a little hiatus due to COVID, we are gathering at the Kennedy Center for some networking. The registration link is there at the lower portion of your screen. Okay, so just a little bit about this series, which is the Far supplements. These are on Wednesdays at 12 o'clock Eastern. You can see where we are. Today we're covering the U.S. Marine Corps and the Navy Far supplement, and the series runs through the end of August, finishing up with the Veterans Affairs, and then on Fridays, so this Friday we've got the Playbook series. So this Friday we'll be doing business with the Marine Corps and Navy. We typically have a speaker from the government. We also have our friends over at FedMine who will talk about contracting opportunities, bidding opportunities, contracting trends over the last couple years. I think we even look at some of the COVID spending within each of the agencies. So again, these correspond to what's happening on Wednesdays. These are Fridays, 12 o'clock Eastern, and they are also complimentary. You can sign up for those on our website. Okay, a quick shout out to our sponsors. First up is the Virginia PTAC. This is the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. They provide training, counseling, mentorship, and various events for aspiring and burgeoning government contractors. You can click on any of the links that you see there on the screen to get to their counseling or to their training calendar. You've also got an email address and a phone number. And the Virginia PTAC is co-located over at the George Mason University in Fairfax. They're funded through DLA and the SBA. We also want to thank the Federal Business Council. They put on a lot of events, both in person and virtual, for government contractors. Many of their events are actually at federal agencies. Their website is there in the lower center of your screen, which is fbcinc.com. If you want to get in touch with anyone there, contact David. You've got his email address and phone number. We want to thank the FBC for their sponsorship. We also want to thank our friends over at Gov White Papers, which sprung out of Gov Events. Regarding Gov White Papers, finding a reliable online source for keeping up with government technology trends and regulations can be overwhelming and time-consuming. Gov White Papers is a free and easy-to-use resource for the public sector and supporting industries to find and share government and military-related content. This saves you time in serving your country. Topics include Navy, Marine Corps, cybersecurity, COVID-19, AI, education, and much more. Gain peace of mind, understanding trends and technologies to modernize and protect your organization while streamlining technology adoption. Claim your free membership on govwhitepapers.com today to access thousands of government and military ebooks, white papers, infographics, and case studies with fresh content added daily. So thanks again to our friends at Gov White Papers. Okay, and so today the reason that we are here is to talk about the FAR supplement covering the Marine Corps and the Navy. We are graciously joined by Lewis Rhodes, who has spoken in many of our webinars over the years. Lewis, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to put myself on mute, and you just let me know when you're ready for your next slide.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And Jennifer, as always, thank you for the opportunity. And you know, there's a few things I like to talk about more than the Marine Corps. When the topics were when Jennifer reached out and said, "Hey, we need someone to address some of the FAR supplements," I quickly jumped on the Navy Marine Corps one because in addition to being a lawyer, I've spent almost 28 years active in reserves combined in the Marine Corps, retiring in the next couple months. So this is, you know, whenever, even when it comes to regs, when I get to talk Marine Corps, I'm always very happy and excited. Quick pitch on my law firm. We're a small boutique firm out in Reston, Virginia. We have 8 lawyers. We work in a small firm with small overhead, so we can keep our rates very manageable for small business clients. We're all here because we like to work for small business clients. We focus on GovCon, but we do pretty much everything within the GovCon space, from M&A through bid protests, claims, and day-to-day counseling, you know, leasing, et cetera. So we like to think we're close to a one-stop shop for your typical government contractor. And with that pitch, Jennifer, happy to go on to the next slide, please. Okay, so the you know, we're gonna call this the NMCARS because the MC is abbreviated for Marine Corps. I can't do the NM CARS like a lot of people call it. So it's the Navy Marine Corps Acquisition Regulation Supplement. All right, if you've listened to any of these presentations, you understand how the supplements work. We'll get into it in a little more depth later on, but they're just that, they're a supplement. The FAR is the Bible. You know, the Dfars then is you know, is a bolt-on scripture book that goes on the Bible, and then the Marine Corps, Navy Marine Corps Acquisition Supplement is, you know, the prayer card that goes on top of the scripture and on top of the Bible. So it all ties in together. It all references back and fits within the FAR, and then you know, the Dfars, and then the service components underneath the Dfars for each individual service. So the acquisition.gov website is fantastic. It has every regulation out there. It's very well indexed. It's easy to use. They've updated it, and they've updated the structure of it within the last 12 to 18 months. You can go and pull hyperlinks to the web pages, or directly to pull down a PDF of the applicable regulation. The link that takes you straight to the NMCARS is there below. Now, the purpose and what the NMCAR, the Navy Marine Corps regs are, to, you know, it says right here, and this is directly out of the first admin paragraph of the regulations. All right, it's to establish a uniform policy for Department of Navy, and it's to augment and supplement the FAR and the Dfars. We'll talk about a couple places later on, like, and sometimes the FAR says the head of the agency shall dictate something. The head of the agency then writes the Dfars, right? The Dfars belongs to the Department of Defense and the agency head. So the head of the agency then comes up with the Dfar components that executes what the FAR said the head of the agency shall do. And then often the Dfars then leaves room for the service components, be it Navy, Air Force, Army, to come up with any other requirements within the framework. So as you're looking through something, it's worth, you know, you need to make sure you're looking at not just the FAR, which a lot of amateurs will look at the FAR and say, oh, the FAR says this. Well, then you also got to make sure there's not an applicable Dfars and then service component, in this case, the Navy Marine Corps team on its regulations. Okay, now notice the bold and italicized. The stuff that goes in this contains mandatory policies and procedures, right? So these are mandatory for the government to follow. The contracting officer and contracting personnel have to comply with these requirements. So do you, contractor. So again, a lot of people miss the boat, and they miss these service component regulations because they're not aware that they're there. So you need to make sure you're reading all the way down through your FAR clauses into your DFAR clauses, and making sure that there's no relevant service component reg that goes along with it. Next slide, please. Okay, so here, everything in the military always has an authority, right? Everything in the government has an authority. So the authority here is the Secretary of the Navy and the SecNav instruction 5400.15. So that's the authority that gives the Secretary of Navy the power to issue these regulations and how they're going to control under the Department of Navy Navy acquisition cycle. The one thing that was really neat when you get into these regs, and I'm not sure if every service component has it out there, they have a specifically right there in the admin part of the regs, they talk about how to provide feedback and request changes to the agency's regulations. All right, they give you an email address, and it's right there. It says policy@navy.mil, and in the subject line, you need to just reference NMCARS 5201.103 and request for approval. So whether you're a contractor or whether you're a government personnel, if you think there's something that should be changed or should be added to the service level regulations here, the Navy does a really good job of telling you how to do it. I've never had to go through this process, so I don't know how well it works, but the fact that it's out there in the reg and they give you the email address and tell you how to send your suggestions is pretty nice to know that you can get straight in front of somebody and provide your feedback and request some updates or changes to the regulations. Next slide, please. Okay, so the one thing we're not going to do is go into detail on the entire form of the of the Navy Marine Corps regulation structure. Okay, there's a total of 41 sections out there. We don't have time to peel apart the onion on every single one of them. There'll be a few ones after. There's going to be a few that I'm going to call out to everybody's attention on clauses you should be looking at. But overall, there's a total of 41 sections to these regulations. Now they range, they start in number. They're 5201 is the first number, and they run out there for a total up through 5252. All right, and they and they cover everything from your basic administration when it starts. They they get into how the government should handle contract bidding. They cover acquisition planning, required sources of supplies and services, simplified acquisition, bidding strategies, how to do sealed bidding, types of contracts, environmental requirements, renewable energy requirements, how to handle patents and copyrights, through taxes to cost accounting standards, through every topic that is in the FAR or in the DFARs is also covered here in the Navy Marine Corps regulation structure. All right, so if you're looking at a FAR clause, again, I'll stomp on wood here. If you're looking at the FAR and you're reading a FAR Part 43 that's talking about how you handle contract modifications, you then also need to get into the DFARs and look at DFARs 243 to figure out how does DoD handle contract modifications? Are there any additional requirements? And then if you're dealing with the Navy and the Marine Corps, you need to look at the Navy Marine Corps regs 5243 to see how the Department of Navy requirements for contract modifications. Again, so when you're looking at the FAR, you then also need to back up and look at the DFAR and then look at the service level regulations to make sure it's all out there. When you look at the contract modifications under the DFARs adds 3 or 4 paragraphs to the FAR, and then there's 4 more subparagraphs added by the Navy Marine Corps regulations. So, when you're working with the Navy, make sure you're reading all the regs. I can't stress this enough. All right, there's 25 annexes that are added to the end of the Navy Marine Corps regulations. These are templates. They're templates for the government and for the contractors to use. It starts out, runs everywhere from the J&A form that the Department of Navy uses all the way out through your closeout templates. When the government's giving you furnished property, there's a template here that it attaches to it. The various different reports that you have to fill out underneath the, as part of your contract. Several of those reports are in Annex 14 to these regs. There's business clearance. You think of it as a form that you have to fill out for the government. It has everything you need in templates here. DoD waivers of the contract employee compensation cap, closeout metrics, and long-range acquisition forecasts. So closeout metrics are important to contractors and the government. So these templates are there. So when you're getting forms from the government, they shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. You can go on to the reg, and again, if you go on the acquisition.gov website link, you can pull each and every single one of these templates you can pull them down from the website and make sure the government's giving you the correct form. Sometimes the government's adding, we've all seen this. Sometimes the government's adding languages and requirements to contract mods. They like to sneak language into your contract mods, asking you to saying by signing the modification, you're waiving your rights to an equitable adjustment under this issue. That's not required, and it's not in the template, but a lot of times the government likes to put it in there. So it never hurts when you're getting a template from the government or a form from the government contracting officer to fill out, to go back and check the template and make sure that the template and the form you are getting match up, and that the government's not putting any additional requirements on what you're doing. And if they are, make sure you're understanding what those requirements are and where they come from. Next slide, please. So, all right. So, how does the Navy Marine Corps acquisition regs fit in with the rest of the FAR and the Dfars? Okay, so we have, if you look at the reg 5201.105 TAC 2, it explains clearly how it fits in. Now, the one thing that's very few people have probably ever seen a direct reference to the Navy Marine Corps acquisition regs. Because it says right in there is, you do not, it says explicitly that you do not reference the NMCARS. So any references to these regs will be without name or acronym prefix. All right, so when you get into a regulation under these regs, it's adding subparagraphs to the Dfars and the FAR clauses. So you're never going to actually see a government document that's going to reference these regulations directly. It's important to know where they're coming from, because if you see, the clue is going to be if you see a FAR clause regulation with a paragraph in it, and when you go look at the FAR and you pull it up online, you're like, that subparagraph's not in my regulation. That subparagraph is being added by either the Dfars or the Navy Marine Corps regs. So again, when you see it and you see it in a document, make sure you're understanding how these all tie together. All right. So references to Far Citations within the Navy Marine Corps regs are supplement and should be read to include the corresponding paragraphs of the Dfars and then this supplement. So meaning when you read the supplement, it talks about a FAR clause, you're putting, again, it's all tied together as one big package. So when you look at these regs, they're not standalone, and they never are. Again, they're a supplement and addition to the original, the FAR and the Dfars clauses. And in the next slide, we'll get into a little bit more on how this ties together. Next slide, please, Jennifer. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. All right, here I pulled an example out of the regs just to help explain how this all ties together. And we're going to use FAR Part 25, which is the Buy American Act, and Buy American Act is incorporated into FAR through 25, Buy American Supplies. Okay, so the FAR has several subparagraphs, and we're going to look at the exceptions to the Buy American Act. All right, so FAR 25.103 covers all the exceptions for when you can buy outside of Buy American Act, right? Whether it's a good that you can't find, whether it's a national emergency, several other exceptions exist into the FAR. One of those is under 103A, addresses, exceptions for the public interest. So the FAR says, hey, head of the agency, when you need to buy something, you need to buy American, but if there's a really important public interest requirement, you get to waive this requirement. So, and again, and go back earlier, when something in the FAR says head of the agency, that's a sign where you need to go look at that agency's acquisition regs. In this case, since we're talking Navy and Marine Corps, we're going to the Department of Defense regs. Department of Defense regs is DOD and the DFARs. So if we're going, so head of the agency, you get to make the decision. So we now go to the DFARs. Well, when you're going from the FAR to the DFAR, the government just slaps a 2 on the front of the FAR clause number, and that's your DFAR clause. So FAR 25.103, it corresponds with DFAR's 225.103. So when you're into DFARs, everything's going to start with a 2. So whatever your FAR clause is, just look for that same number, 2XX, in this case 225, and that brings you to your FAR clause. Now, if you go into the DFARs and you go to 225.103, you're going to have a lot of, you're going to have almost a full page and a half of regulations on how the DOD treats public interest exceptions to the Buy American Act. Okay, FAR 25.103A has one sentence, and that one sentence says, hey, head of the agency, you have the authority to deviate the public interest. DFAR's 225.103 takes that one sentence and replaces it with a page and a half, laying out the requirements for how the DOD will decide on a public interest exception to the Buy American Act. Now, then when you're done reading through the DFAR, since you're selling to the Navy or the Marine Corps, you need to go look at the Navy Marine Corps acquisition reg 5225.103. So FAR is the first 2 numbers. The DFARS throws the 2 in front of that number, and the Department of Navy throws a 5 on the front of its number. So everything in the Navy Marine Corps acquisition regs is going to start with a 5. And then you get the DFARS references a 2. So since the Navy Marine Corps is underneath the DOD, every number is going to start with a 52. And then you're going to get into your FAR clause, which in here it's 5225.103. So this ties us all the way back. When you see that, that ties us all the way back to FAR clause 25.103. So the Department of Navy adds one, they slip in one subparagraph under the DFARS and the instruction there, and that's, you see the subparagraph A2B3, which gives you an idea of how many paragraphs the DFARS has. But that's one subparagraph it's added, and it tells you who to contact in the Navy when you need to request a public interest exception to the Buy American Act. So again, you go, you look at the FAR, then you flip over to the DFARS. The clause, it's going to be the same number, only starts with a 200. And then you get into the Navy Marine Corps acquisitions. It's going to start with a 5.2, and then your FAR clause or your FAR paragraph provision, and that's how you're going to get to it. So now, when you cite this, if you were to cite this clause, you go back to the instructions from the Navy regs. You don't cite the NMCARS. You cite directly to the DFARS, and you would cite DFARS 225.103, and then you would add that subparagraph from the Navy Marine Corps regulations into the DFAR regs. So it sounds really confusing. It's a lot of words to say something that's pretty simple. It's fairly intuitive. You start with your FAR number, you add a 2 when it's a relevant DFAR number, you add a 5 when it's a relevant Navy Marine Corps number. That comes up with your 52XX. When you add a subparagraph out of the Navy regs, you just slip it into where it fits numerically within the Dfar clause. So that's an example walking through how the citations work, how the Navy Marine Corps regs tie back into the Dfars and tie back into the FAR. So that I hope I made that more clear than it sounded in my own head. Next slide, please, Jennifer. Okay. Now, when you're when you're looking at the Navy Marine Corps regs, here's some clauses I think if you're selling to the Navy or the Marine Corps, you should go take a look at and see what additional requirements and regulations, et cetera, that have been added by the Department of the Navy. So when you get into FAR 5215, all right, that's contracting by negotiation, right? The Navy adds certain requirements for how if the agency wants to do cost realism, they need to have some specific language in their proposal that's gonna try to cost realism. All right, it needs to say specifically that if you're gonna apply cost realism in a Navy contract government, you must say, the language that proposed costs may be adjusted for the purposes of proposal evaluation based upon the results of the cost realism analysis. So if you're seeing a Navy or Marine Corps bid off solicitation and it's for a cost, it's saying we're going to evaluate you for cost realism, they need to tell you that they're going to adjust your prices as part of the cost realism piece. Okay, so they also have specific requirements for the SSA spelled out here. All right, and then they add a subparagraph under Dfar's 215.304, which talks about evaluation factors. All right, what the Navy and Marine Corps have added here is acquisition programs have to have an energy efficient component when they evaluate it. Part of the things they have to evaluate you with is if it's an energy consuming end item, i.e. you're selling a truck, a boat, a jet, or something to the Navy Marine Corps team, they have to consider the energy consumption as part of their evaluation factor. That's a specific requirement added by these regulations. When special contracting methods again, and again, these tie into, you get into 5217 and you get additional subparagraphs that are added into the Dfar's clause. That's going to be Dfar's clause 217. Okay, the head of the contracting authority has certain abilities and restrictions added to them by the Department of the Navy. All right, if you think about it, the Navy, when you have ships sailing around the world, they have to have a little more flexibility in their ability to buy certain things in certain places. So a lot of that stuff is spelled out here in 5217. 5219 gets to the small business programs. Okay, if you're a small business and you're selling to the Navy and the Marine Corps, you should go take a look through this regulation. All right, they want to utilize, they have a policy, says straight there in the regs, the Department of Navy policy is utilize small business, better known small business, service disabled, better known, hub zone, small disadvantaged businesses, and women-owned small businesses to obtain its requirements. All right, such concerns shall have the maximum practicable opportunity to bid as both a prime and a sub. That's Department of Navy policy. This means, so if you're a small business and you're out there and you see a Navy opportunity come out full and open, that's the regulation you need to go cite and pull up and put in front of the contracting officer and say, hey, this needs to be a small business set aside. Here it says so right in your regs. Again, and you're only going to find that policy if you get into the specific Navy Marine Corps regulations. So Department of Navy says, hey, it needs to be a small business if it's at all practicable for a small business to do the work. Okay, part 5233, that's every government contracts lawyer's favorite section. FAR part 4033, that talks about protests, disputes, and appealing appealing claims. Okay, so 5233, here we're getting down to the agency level. Most attorneys are going to tell you agency level protests are not our preferred course of action. But here in this clause in 5233, it talks about how to do an agency level protest at Department of Navy. So there's times and places for agency protests. Here's where the instructions the instructions, requirements, and deadlines are going to be spelled out. FAR Part 5243, all right, that's your contract modifications. So contract mods, right? We all get dozens of mods to every contract you see. So this layers on requirements for how the agency is supposed to be handling change orders and et cetera. You know, it has stuff on change orders, cost savings, how to definitize change orders, et cetera. It adds, it doesn't, that clause isn't very long, but it's long enough that you should pay attention if you have a Navy Marine Corps contract. And then the last part, 5249.4, all right, that talks about termination of contracts. And that's got some specific requirements. If you get T for deed or you get a cure notice, these have requirements for your contracting officer to report this in the FAPIS and other places. So basically it goes on your permanent record. So pay attention to this stuff because, you know, as anyone who's seasoned in government contracting knows, a termination for anything other than the convenience of the government is really bad and will follow you. And the requirements here in the Department of Navy regs are they will follow you permanently because they're going into your permanent file, so to speak, as a government contractor. So, you know, those are some highlights of some of the key areas that's worth it's worth for you digging into a little bit deeper if you're selling to the Department of Navy. Again, these are the same as provisions of the FAR. They get added in when you sell to the Navy, you sell to the Marine Corps. All the language out here in all these Navy Marine Corps acquisition regs get added in and supplemented and are binding and required. Go back to that slide a couple slides ago for the government and the contractors to follow. So when you're dealing with an agency, you need to make sure you're reading the agency regulations as well as the FAR. Next slide, please. Okay, and one big one that everyone should be paying attention to. This is a little bit old. Well, not a little bit. It's a couple years old now, but it's something that obviously, you know, especially as we're watching everything that's unfolding in Europe and Ukraine, the big threat that we feel we face from Russia really is cyber. There's a lot of requirements for additional cybersecurity. If I say CMMC, most contractors will run and hide under their desk. It's something none of us like to deal with, but there's requirements out there. One of the most significant recent revisions to the Navy Marine Corps regs was implementation of the Gertz Memo. If you're selling to the Navy and the Marine Corps, you've probably seen this, even if you don't understand what the Gertz Memo is. All right, Secretary of Navy Gertz came out with a memo back in the end of 2019. So it's just over 2 years old, or it was 2018. The acquisition regs were updated in 2019, layering in all the requirements for cybersecurity. Now, a lot of this stuff is not new. It's not in a vacuum. A lot of it ties to CMMC, but not all of it. So Navy Marine Corps Acquisition Reg 520473, here's the really big important language you need to read if you're a contractor. Contracting officers are required to impose an equitable price reduction to a contractor if there's a critical or major non-conformance under the cybersecurity regulations. So if you're dealing with anything that has to do with cybersecurity to the Navy Marine Corps, you need to make sure you understand the requirements and understand them thoroughly. Otherwise, if you're not conforming, the government has to, you know, now the contracting officer has discretion to figure out what's critical or major. But if you're not conforming to the cyber requirements, the government is going to have an equitable price reduction of your contract. You know, when I read things like impose an equitable price reduction, I get very nervous, and I make sure I read it pretty thoroughly. Annex 16, I said at the beginning, when you get to the annexes under the Navy Marine Corps regs, the annexes spell out the specific forms and specific requirements. So Annex 16 was added to the Navy Marine Corps regs to implement the requirements of the Gertz Memo. Now, when you read through it, it's very similar and very much CMMC requirements, but this is separate and apart and supplements the requirements in CMMC and the FAR. Remember, these are the agency requirements are above and supplemented to the requirements of the government writ large. The Navy and Marine Corps is then supplementing what it says to the Dfars. So you need to pull Annex 16. If you take one thing away from this entire presentation, you need to go pull Annex 16 and read through it and make sure that you're complying with the cybersecurity elements to the Navy Marine Corps regulations. Like I said, when I read equitable price reduction, I want to make sure I have every I dotted and T crossed and then some. So that's the highlight. That's obviously just a wave tops version. There's 41 chapters to the regs. We could probably spend several hours if we were to go through each one in detail. I highlighted, as an attorney, the ones that I want to read closest, ones I think you should read closest. Obviously the cyber one, I'm going to jump up and down and stomp my foot at. But there's how the regs work. And if you're like, what's the NMCARS? I've never heard of it before. I hope I explained why, because now you understand that you don't cite them directly. You cite it as a subparagraph within the Dfars. So if you ever see a Dfars reg that has a paragraph, but when you look into Dfars, you don't see it, you need to understand where it's coming from. It's coming from one of the service components. In this case, Navy Marine Corps, Army and Air Force have the exact same kind of documents with their requirements that are similar, but not exactly the same as the Department of the Navy's. And with that, I believe this is my last slide, Jennifer. I think next slide says thank you. And so that's it. And again, Lewis Rhodes, I'm with a boutique GovCon firm. I spent about 7 years as an in-house counsel for small businesses. So I kind of learned to do a little bit of everything in the GovCon space, including write and price proposals, which I think helps give me a unique perspective when I have to fight the government on a protest or a claim. So again, Jennifer, thank you for the opportunity. I always like presenting for you. You always have a great crowd. And with that, I'm turning it back to you.
All right, thank you so much. This was an awesome presentation, very succinct and to the point. And yeah, I love the way you laid out the information. So very helpful, and thanks for sharing your time and expertise with us. If anybody has any questions about today's presentation, you can direct them to Lewis. You've got his phone number and email address here. Everything today has been recorded. It usually takes, I don't know, I'll say by midnight tonight, we should have it up on our website and on our YouTube channel. You guys will also get an email with a link to both of those, as well as the PowerPoint, which has links to our upcoming event, as well as our COVID contracting webinar. Tomorrow we've got a webinar at 12 o'clock covering government contracting sales, and then Friday is corresponding playbook series for Navy and Marine Corps. With that, I think I've got one slide here which just says thank you all for attending. And like I said, yeah, the recording will be out shortly. So thanks again, Lewis, and thanks again, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks.